Welcome traders, Adam Harris here, Chief Market Analyst. So let's have a look at the news. I'm producing this is sort of Tuesday morning, a little bit later than normal, but I'm sort of on a working holiday, so excuse the delay. So first of all, really, we've got a lot of dollar news coming out this week that's inflation related. Expectations are not really that high. Current sentiment is that inflation is likely to increase. Stagnation is a possibility, a likelihood, in fact, in the future. There's a lot of stuff. So based off this and based off what I'm going to show you in the charts, it makes reasonable sense that the dollar is going to continue to weaken. But also, I think I want to really keep an eye as well on non-US economies to see how they're doing. Are they going to be impacted by what's going on in the US and or potentially manage to kind of get by unscathed? We'll have to see how that unfolds, unfortunately. But for now, this is the key stuff. I'll already be paying attention to, for example, jobless claims, CPI data as well. No change expected here out of the Eurozone. GDP in Japan, obviously some political upheaval there. Interested to see what actually happens with that as well. And then, of course, we've got GDP in the UK, which ideally is break-even or positive. Let's see how that ultimately plays out. But just be aware this week is relatively news-intensive for the most part. Let's see what the technicals have to say about that. Okay, so let's start off here with the VIX. The VIX currently actually still operating near all-time lows, still on lows over here, still at lows on the monthly. Obviously, that's the same on all different timeframes, but just giving you some perspective here. So currently, the markets are not perturbed at all. And I think part of that could be simply that they can see, for the most part, everything that is coming down the pipeline, and they're not really too disturbed by anything just yet. They're just navigating around it. But again, I always have alerts set up here, so if there is a big spike, we'll see. But it's, if anything, I would say it's coiling here. It's forming a little bit of a descending triangle, which could lead to a breakout, because it can't go much lower, but it could lead to a breakout. But point here is the market, the heartbeat is relatively stable. Having a look at the dollar index, I want to draw your attention just to the weakness of the last 4 or 5 weeks here. So overall, we have had a nice downtrend, moving average geometry, and a nice little bearish formation here. We've got price pulling back into the moving averages and just sitting on the strong level here at about 97.44. Just that pressure from above on the weekly there, pushing down, leading here to likely to a breakout, which is kind of imminent, as in it seems and appears to be happening as we speak. When we look at it from a monthly perspective, we can see price breaking out of this range, then pushing back, retesting it and rejecting it. We've already broken the low of last month, and so the pressure is very much to the downside. You can see the MACD now sitting below zero and also starting to break a little bit lower. So technically, this market has one direction in mind, which is to head lower. Of course, could something change? Could we get a strong rejection here? That's always a possibility, but I got to tell you, the pressure is very much to the downside there, which means that euro dollar, and we can see it today already having broken up to new high, having broken out of its range. The weekly continuing to push higher, the monthly continuing to push higher, which means that there's a very high chance we're going to see that. Ultimately, that 1.22 is very much on the horizon and becomes more likely if we break these previous highs, if we start to break above this high over here. Let's have a look. What is that? 1830. Okay, so 1.1830, we could see that push higher. If we have a look at cable as well, you can see cable starting to break out of its range. Weekly as well, starting to look nice and bullish. And that monthly, beautiful, just really nice pullback, bullish candle and a break above the high of that MACD, in every case sort of pushing high, looking good. So far, pointing to that here, we've got dollar yen. Dollar yen, I kind of feel for them right now. In terms of the economy, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's a lot of pressure. This is moving in the direction they want, but they're under a lot of pressure, a lot of different things happening there. So we'll see how that goes. From a technical perspective, that looks like it's heading lower. Dollar Swissy as well, you can see just very much following through. A lot of wicks top and bottom, just meaning that this wasn't a smooth trend, but the momentum from a bigger picture, when you zoom out, you can see it's pushing to the downside, and the same on the monthly here. So we're going to start to see this head down towards those sort of lows that we experienced. If you were there, January 2015, if you remember the intervention and the depegging as well, all that whole bit of drama. Now, dollar CAD. Dollar CAD is very much trying to push high. Here's the thing, that the Canadian dollar is weak as well, but it's really now a competition between which one is weaker faster, which is going to be the Canadian dollar or the US dollar. And right now, it's pretty much just ranging. Moving on to the MVP right now, which is gold. All right, just gold pretty much very much in a bubble. This is just obviously an exceptional move considering how long it's been going for. And this is simply a reflection of looking for certainty in uncertain times. And right now, as I said, it's in a bubble, which means let's just keep trading this until eventually it does burst. Right now, I've got to say that monthly, excuse me, that's my pooch. Now, this monthly had a really nice 3-4 month consolidation. and a breakout. So it's had a nice rest. That weekly has had a beautiful rest and a breakout. So we're kind of fresh out of those breakouts. We've got a ridiculous run here. We need to have a bit of a pullback. We really do. And that's got to be due sometime soon. But for now, this is number one on my list of charts to trade, looking for a pullback here when it does happen. But it just is pushing higher and higher and higher. Crude oil. Honestly, not one of the best charts at the moment, producing those lower highs, going down. The momentum is slowly but steadily pushing it down. I don't believe at this time that crude oil is as valuable a commodity to the whole world now the way that it was 20 years ago. I just don't see it featuring in most of our daily lives as much as it used to. And it's going to be interesting. It's not really going to be motivation for war as much as it was in the past. It's not going to be bought by the public anymore because we just don't seem to depend on it as much as we used to. So obviously there is still lots of uses for it, but it just doesn't feature in our lives the same way. And so I can't really see how this is going to ultimately recover. There's just much more downward pressure, even on the daily, on the weekly, but it doesn't have much of a trend. Not a lot of people are engaging in it. There's not much reason to, right? It's not being traded or used as much in terms of assets and other instruments around the world. It's just not as popular. So now let's have a look at the global indices. Global indices from a monthly perspective look really nice. Now we have to be aware we are in September, and in September it is not unheard of to get a market correction, right? That's very feasible that we could have that happen. You can see here on the weekly, we've sort of started going a little bit sideways, but the trend is very much to the upside. MACD is trending higher. The monthly looks good. It's not that far away from the moving averages. And you can actually see here on the weekly, we've got, I'm just going to adjust that. We've got a very nice resistance level that we're working our way up to. So we could be building up a potential ascending triangle, which leads to a breakout, but we have also at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, we've got very clear bearish divergence here, which is just multiple divergences. Now, normally what happens after a period like that is that we would get a correction. We'd get a period like this, continued divergence, and then ultimately a bit of a correction, which led to a consolidation, and then it just recharges battery and batteries and then continue to climb higher. So we could be heading back into a period like that. We'll see if it fails to break up to this level, and if that's going to be the case. If we have a look at this, we compare this to the S&P, we've got something sort of similar here. We've got this continued bullishness, but definitely continued bearish divergence, and therefore there's a very reasonable possibility we could see a bit of a correction coming soon. This looks very similar. If I just sort of go back here and we go back to a period in time over here, let's have a look. There we go. It's a very nice example of it. Here you can see this just continued climbing, continued bearish divergence, then we get a strong correction, which then ultimately leads to a big run. Okay, so no reason why we couldn't necessarily have something similar to that happen here. So just exercising some caution, but what it also means is that I want to be paying a lot of attention to these lows here, because that could be the early signal that we start to break lower. Okay, let's go back to this. Let's have a look at the NASDAQ. So NASDAQ as well, tech stocks also coming up into these highs. But again, I really would pay attention to these levels of support around here to see how they hold up. Overall, in every other respect, we look good, but you can see a little bit of stumbling starting to happen here. I'm just keeping in mind what can happen in September, and you can see clear continued divergence there. So we're due for a correction based off what we're seeing off the daily. The thing is, we're also in a bubble in the market here, and we could see this continue for a couple more weeks. It's possible, but given the fact that it is September, could we in September see that correction happen so that it times out nicely with how September can often be bearish, and then have a nice rally, Santa Claus rally up into the Christmas period? Let's have a look. Be prepared for that. Let's see how it plays out. Russell 2000 just showing you here. This is enjoying a really nice rally at the moment, and also we can see that couple of weeks prior to that, very nice and strong, now starting to stumble a little bit, but even on the daily just continues to push higher. So where it gets interesting for me is when you step outside of the US. You can see we've had a nice little pullback here on the weekly in the FTSE. Nice bit of a strong correction over there, but overall this is looking a lot stronger outside the US than inside the US. The DAX, which has been range bound for a while here, could enjoy a little bit of a correction as well. Here's another key level to watch, these lows here. If we break that, we're likely to see that bit of a correction a little bit further. And in fact, let's just adjust it so we get both the highs, top and bottom, nice support resistance level, and ultimately, but the quality of the trend of the market. Excuse me. Okay, so let's move on. Let's have a look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin to me looking pretty good here on the weekly. This was a very nice level of support and resistance that we found. Very nice resistance over here. Sorry, let's just extend it so that it makes more sense to you. And we appear to have come back and have found some potential support there. We definitely no doubt going to have some resistance where we are, but the overall trend still looks very good to me, and I can't really see why we couldn't see this continue to push high. We've almost in an uptrend on the daily. We could see this take another run back up towards that 123 level. Having a look at Ethereum. Ethereum also a nice little shallow pullback. You get slowing down here, trying to stay above this level. And so we're going to see this week if it continues to push higher as well. Let's have a look at the Mag 7. So the Mag 7, we could see Apple gapped up, but this trend's still intact at the moment, certainly from a weekly perspective. That looks very, very nice. And the monthly also looks very nice. Microsoft, to me, enjoying a very nice healthy correction here, so I'll be keeping an eye on this. We're back in the moving averages here. We could see this potentially go a little bit lower, but for the most part I'm still bullish on this. Very nice here to have a monthly retracement here if it can come back down, but keeping an eye on this to see if there's any signs of bullishness returning. Amazon over here continuing to push higher, that monthly looking really good. Nice little pullback, nice solid bullish candles. Daily also testing these highs over here. We're starting to look more bullish on the MACD, so again that looking more bullish than bearish. Google now starting to head far away from the moving averages, bigger candles, certainly in the late stages of its move, but otherwise looking incredibly bullish as well. So for me, pullbacks for now still continue to provide buying opportunities. Here we go. We got Meta, which is very nice breakouts on the weekly pullback, bullish candle, finding potential support there. We've broken the high. So for now, my expectation is that this will continue to move higher. Let's have a look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA pulling back on the weekly into the moving averages. This is a really nice sweet spot for it to potentially turn around. We've worked our way out of this divergence, so we can actually just get rid of that. We don't need to have that stuff anymore. We can get rid of that as well. Okay, so we worked our way out. We've had a really nice correction, and we're now back into a new move. And again, possibly here a little bit of a smaller correction on the monthly, but this provides the basis for continuing upwards. So watching that weekly very closely from my side. Tesla here, really, this is still just continuing to bump its head up here against close to that sort of 360 level. We'll see if it can ultimately do it. It is benefiting from that rising tide lifting all boats, but you can see it's much more volatile, big swings, up and down, big swings, and it's battling from a monthly perspective. You can really see where that kind of limit is. And I think it'll get a bit of a boost to the upside, but I'm not really seeing this being as a result of Tesla itself, but more as a result of it getting boosted by the rest of the markets. Okay, and then having a look here, finishing up with Netflix, we've got a nice higher trend, still high lows, high highs going up, nice and bullish on the weekly. Overall, this doesn't look bad. The monthly looking quite sweet to me, and the daily now starting to break and move upwards here. It's got equal sort of no clear trend just yet, but it is starting to push higher. So seeing more signs of bullishness currently in this. I know where we are in terms of what's going on with tariffs. I also am aware of what's going on with it being September and the dollar and so on and so forth, but technically just relaying how the markets are looking at this time. So plenty to think about and some possible opportunities on quite a few of these charts. So that's it, ladies and gents. Have a great week. Stay frosty.